Okay, hi, my name is Alejandro. I'm a developer from Buenos Aires, Argentina. That's South America, near Brazil, if you don't know where it is. Right now it's like 3 p.m. and it's beginning to get chill. It's 13 Celsius degree right here. So, okay, let's start with the subject of the talk. We will talk about the history of JavaScript. This was originally called a 5th of century, but today is almost 21 years since the invention of the language. So I don't know if you heard about the concept of time travel around JavaScript tools. For example, in Redux, you have some kind of time travel, and in also track record, you have the feature to debug with time travel options. So today we're going to do just the same with one of the oldest tools that we have available, and that's the imagination for us. Of course, V1. And after these, first of all, I want to ask, how many of you have been writing JavaScript for more than 1 year? Please raise your hand. Let me see. Okay. For more than 5 years, we have a few. Yeah, 5, 6 people. For more than 10 years, we have 3, 2. For more than 15 years, okay. That's, I think, one of the most important takeaways of my talk. If you would have to talk with a developer 15 years ago, and you would say, hey, I want to write JavaScript, or I'm going to work writing JavaScript, they will tell you that you are drunk, or crazy, or both, right? But not only it's common today to work on these technologies and this programming language, but it's one of the most used languages in the world. So that's the biggest takeaway for my talk. Now that we have that sorted out, we will talk about the path that we will take, starting from the latest ECMAScript version, which was ES 2015. And ECMAScript is the specification for which JavaScript is implemented, right? JavaScript is only a commercial name, and it's the implementation of ECMAScript. ECMAScript is also taken care of by a group of people called TC39. Here we have a small set of images, so you can see some of the people that work on TC39, but there are many more. So, as we were saying, we will start on the latest ECMAScript version, also called ES6. And we will go through the previous versions down to the version 5 and so on and so forth till the very first one. And after that, we will talk about the time between the first version and between the invention of the language. And last, we are going to talk in retrospective how the process changed between all these years, right? So starting from the first part, going through ES 2015 to ES5, we have a list of the most important, at least for me, the most important features that were added. The first one, classes. You have arrow functions now, iterators, and also generators, proxies, destructuring, let, and const, which give you block scoping, and many more. So for you to have an idea on the size of this transition, I have here a graph that shows you the difference between the specification, the amount of pages that have each version of the specification. So you can see that in the first two, you don't have a significant change. From the two, from the second and the third, you have a small increment. And the same happens with the third and version 5. But between the last one, ES 2015, and the previous one, we have almost twice or more than twice the number of pages. So that big the latest version is. You have a number of features, and if we had to talk about all those features now, we wouldn't have the time. So my recommendation for you is, you like it or not, I don't think that all the features are needed to program, but it will take place, you like it or not. So my recommendation is to adapt and start learning if you don't know about these features. So I have a list of books you can read for the last version. The first one is Understanding ECMAScript 6. You have the second one by Axel Rauschmacher, the writer for Duality blog, and the last one is a part of the series by Kyle Simpson. So let's move on and talk on the next transition. Going through ES5, from ES5 to ES4, we have a small gap because there wasn't an ES4 release. And the main reason for that, I think, is it would break compatibility with all the things that people were developing at that moment. So for you to have an idea, here we have a quote by Douglas Crawford. ES4 was so large and so innovative that there were doubts about whether it could be successfully specified and implemented. So at that moment, there was a group of people working from Google, Yahoo, and many other companies on what it would be ES4. And also at the same time, there was another group working on ES 3.1, an improved version of ES3. But both groups were working on so different things, but at the same time, it was tightly coupled. So it was difficult to reach consensus between groups. And from that consensus was born the project Harmony. And Harmony was the idea to take advantage of the knowledge of both groups and make the next release that we know today it was ES5. From the proposal that they wrote, we had some successors like ActionScript 2.0 and JavaScript 10.02. So moving on, let's talk about the actual previous specification, which was ES3. And here we have a small timeline of the things that were happening in the JavaScript ecosystem. So in 2009, we had the ES5 release. In 2006, we had the first release of jQuery. In the same year, we had Ajax being standardized. In 2004, we had the first application written in JavaScript, the first considerably large application written in JavaScript, which was Gmail at that moment. We have a gap on 2000. In the year 99, we have the release of the version 3. So we have a representation here of what it would be like the TC39 meetings at that moment. We have Brendan Ake and Douglas Corford talking in the picture. So let's talk about what we lost on the transition. So ES5 introduced one of the most important features, that is strict mode. Strict mode allows you to work in a subset of features and have some things done right. But of course, it would take, it wouldn't have to break backwards compatibility. So that's why they had this mode. We had getters and setters. There were added the higher order array methods, like for each, map, reduce, filter, etc. We have the JSON implementation. How many people here remember adding the JSON.js file to their HTML? Raise your hand. We have a few ones. So yeah, actually back there in the moment, you didn't have a JSON object at your disposal. You would have to add a library that would give you an implementation of the JSON object. It was crazy. So moving on, it also added object.to and object freeze. And last, one of the most, how to say, the worst part of the release was that on the previous versions, you could change the reference to undefined. So for you to have an idea what that means, if you wrote this code in previous versions of ES5, it would be okay, right? And that's really, really bad. A really important part of the feature that you cannot make, cannot change the reference to primitive values like undefined, right? You would compare values with undefined all the time, so that's not a good thing. So moving on the next transition, going from ES3 to ES2, we have not that many time between. It was the release on the year 98, and we have a list of things that Dr. ES3 introduced. The first and most important one was try-catch. Before all the previous versions, you couldn't do error handling in your functions. So if you have a function that have a type error or any kind of error, it would give you a pop-up, right? And you wouldn't have the chance to catch that. We also had strict comparison. The instance of operator was introduced to function.apply, the switch statement, function expressions. This is important because after these transitions, we will talk about how one would have to write functions without the ability to write function expressions. And the other part of array helpers, which was .push, .pop, slice, to add, to manage all the elements of the array. So previous to ES3, you had to do that yourself. And regular expressions were also added in ES3. So for the transition from version 2 to 1, we don't have too much to say. It was a year or so in the middle. But we have something to notice on the ES2 release. And I wanted to look about the future reserved words for this specification. And there were a lot. Today, on the specification, you wouldn't see this kind of featured words. But back then, they were added. And if you recognize most of these reserved words, it's because from 40 of them, 38 are also a Java keyword. So this gives you an idea of what they were trying to do with not only with the language, the implementation of the language, but with the specification. They were trying to make it like, at that moment, like Java. So this is one of my favorite parts of the path, talking about the time between the first release of the specification and the invention of the language, which initially was called Mocha. So it's also a very dark place to be. There wasn't any specification, any blog post. You didn't have documentation on Netscape at that moment. You didn't have anything. So it was created in the year 95 by Brendan Eich. And also at that time, it was being embedded Java, Ruby, and PHP. So, as I was saying, you don't have any documentation, any source whatsoever to look at how the implementation would have to work. So, how we get the implementation at that moment. So we do a reverse engineering on the engine. So we are going to talk about specifically the version 3 of Netscape. And we are going to talk about what things were implemented at that moment and what things weren't, and how it changed nowadays. So, one of the interesting parts of the implementation for Netscape was that the constructor property couldn't be set by an assignment. And only couldn't be set, but if you would try to assign a value, the browser would give you an error and would have a pop-up saying that that's not allowed. You didn't have array literals and object literals, so that's not a major issue. So everybody changed how you are used to write in software. And one of the most annoying things of these implementations was that any error in your script, in your page, in your JavaScript would open up a bug. So the flow would be the user would have to click accept to continue the execution of JavaScript, which now it sounds like a really bad decision, but who knows? Back then could make sense. So if you had too many JavaScript errors, you would have another one to indicate that you would have too many of the previous ones. That was really annoying too. One of the other things, the worst things that I found was that at that time, the implementation for the number constructor would throw if the parameter could not be converted successfully. So today, we see the JavaScript as a language with coercion, with type transformations, but at that time, if you would have any string that couldn't be successfly converted to a number, it would throw an error. And that means it would give you a pop-up in the page, and the user would have to make accept. Any other of the primitive constructors like string or boolean or function or object would not do this. They would coerce every type into the expected type. So another thing was, if you were doing a comparison between two different values, and one of them was boolean, undefined, or number, it then will coerce both operands to number. And that means if you do something like this, you have a comparison between a new object. Remember, we didn't have object literals back then. So we had the only way to create a new object is using its constructor. So on the left side of the comparison, we have a new object. On the right side, we have the value for boolean. For a boolean. So this will end up in a pop-up saying that the left side of the comparison couldn't be coerced to number. So that's also a very, very bad decision for me. So also, while trying and looking for implementations on this particular version of Netscape, I often try to see if the object of or the global that we know today would have been present at that moment. So for doing that, one would imagine doing a comparison with undefined or using filthiness, using a comparison to a Boolean, right? So while doing some of the comparisons, looking for implementations at this version of Netscape, I found that this pop-up. So at that moment, I didn't understand what it was trying to say. So my face was like, okay, I don't know what you're telling me. I already know that undefined is not defined, but at some moment I understood that they didn't have the reference to undefined. I knew that the value would exist, because if you declare a variable and you don't give it a value or assign anything to it, would have undefined. But turns out you couldn't access the reference to the value undefined. So I came up with an idea, making a library for making a polyfill for undefined. The line of code that I wrote for the library was, well, of course, at first a declaration, an assignment to a variable without the var statement, so it would be global to the script. And on the right side of the assignment, I would type void. For those who are not familiar with the void operator, it would return the value undefined, no matter what you put on the left side of the operator. So with this, then I could do some simple comparisons between undefined values and the reference undefined. With this library, I thought, okay, it's a nice library for me. I could post it, I could publish the library to NPM, and I got a nice surprise. So when I wanted to publish the NPM module, I would get that there was already an undefined module existing in the repository. And okay, I said he had the idea before. It looks like a proof of concept too, but then I look at the times that were downloaded, and it seems that people are using the module undefined. So if you can tell me why is that, I would be happy to listen. So moving on. This is one of the polyfills that I translated to the first version. My point here is at that moment we didn't have a lot of things. We didn't have a proper error handling. We didn't have a lot of helpers. But most of the power of the programming language, most of the features that make it great, it was there at the beginning. So quickly, I will tell you why this works. So the polyfill for object.create on the right side would be a function expressions, but at that moment we didn't have function expressions. So the right way to create a new function would be using its constructor. Okay. The first parameter is the parameter of the function you are creating, and the second part that you could see here is the body for the function. Okay. That's only the implementation that I found for object.create translated to Mocha, to the implementation of JavaScript at that moment. So let's go back to how it's the process today and how it will be for the future releases. So right now we'll have a release of the ECMAScript specification each year, and they have different processes to make what goes in and what goes out of the current specification. They enter a train model base, which features that wouldn't make it to stage 4, for example, will have to wait to next year to be on the specification, and so on. So they adapted the process to a faster release process, and having other people also in the committee in the DC39. At that moment, at first they were only people working on major browsers vendors. Today we have more diversity, and diversity is always good. It's also more open to the community. If you would like to make questions to the DC39, to raise an issue, or to propose a feature, you could on the GitHub page, or the other link is for the mailing list that they use to communicate. So overall, for me it's a good change in perspective from back then to now. Here are some of the research that I use. One talk by Brendan Ake, another one by Scott Hanselman about the history too, and the third one is a talk on Node Summit from 2015. They had a panel with several of the DC39 members. So for me, I don't know if you have any question.
Does anyone have any questions there, folks? I'll relay them through.
Okay.
Anyone there? Yeah, there's a question down the back.
What's his favorite feature coming in the future for JavaScript?
Alejandro, what's your favorite feature coming in the future for JavaScript?
Strictly in the future, I would say generators are, well, we have already generators. The next step would be to have async functions and async generators too. But those are being worked on, and they are not scheduled to be released in 2016, maybe next year. will have we will have a proposal. But yeah, that would be my pick.
Anybody else?
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Big thank you, Alejandro. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.